Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Eye on the Eagles, your all-access pass to all things Avila Athletics. It's our first Monday morning episode in quite a while. Happy to have you with us. I'm Sports Information Director Tim Hackett, and our first guest this morning, head baseball coach Matt Carpenter. Welcome to the show, Carp.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Strong start for me on this show. It's only up from here, and it's glad to have you as always. You guys are off to a roaring start here in 2024, especially in league play. It's been a little bit since we've had the chance to talk with you, so I want to just kind of go over some of the stuff that's been happening for you guys over the last couple of weeks. 9-6 to start off conference play, and you're one of the top 5 teams in the league right now. How does that feel?
It feels good. It's a position we're not really used to being in. We haven't been in this spot for several years, so it's exciting. But I tell the guys all the time that you earn the right to play in big games, and what they've done so far is they have earned that right. So the games that we're playing in right now are big games for us. So a lot on the line every time we take the field, which is a nice feeling to have. It's why we do what we do, right? The stakes are high. Every play is magnified. But we're really happy with the position that we're in right now, and hope that we can continue to play some good baseball and hopefully stay in this position throughout the rest of the season.
Not only have you guys consistently won games in league play, but you've won a lot of games in comfortable fashion, in convincing fashion, impressive fashion, starting off with that 3-game series against Bethany. Won all 3, couple of games ending early, complete game shutout for Cash and Sean's on the way. That was a real good tone setter for you guys against a team that has won a couple of games since then. So I guess we're a little bit better than what we thought at the time, but you guys still took care of business in that series.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see. You form your opinions on the teams that you play early in the league and everything, but then you'll go back and you'll see results that you follow them the rest of the year, and you see, okay, how'd they do against this team or how'd they do against that team, and there's always surprises, things that make you feel either maybe a little better about the wins that you had or even the losses that you had, and sometimes things where you're like, oh man, I thought maybe they were going to do better than that. But Bethany has gone out and won some games since they played us, so that's always good to see. To see them have good results against teams that we're yet to play, that's good to see. But I imagine a lot of teams in the conference are a lot like us, where you never know what you're going to get from day to day. So, but yeah, it's good to see some teams that we've had some success against go out and have some success against other teams as well.
One of the things that I said even live during the series against Ottawa was that people are going to, other fans, coaches, teams around the league, we're going to look back in and look at those scores like you just said, we always do, and look at those results and have their heads turned because of it. It's a 3-game series sweep against Ottawa that is perennially one of the better teams, if not historically one of the best teams in the KCAC, but perennially a conference tournament team, league contender. You guys took all 3 off of them. What was that like?
It was a great feeling, no doubt about it. They were exhausting games. Not a lot of games in this league are easy, and that weekend was definitely the case there. I thought the thing I took away from that weekend the most was game 1 we had to really fight back, and we were behind a lot of that game, and we had to scratch and claw to get back into it. Which we were able to do, and as a coach, you always like seeing that from your team, because you kind of have 2 choices whenever you get down big. You can pack it in, or you can give it a shot and come back and see what you can do. And we were able to do that. And then when we won the second game of the series, I remember telling the guys, this game 3 says a lot about our discipline and who we are as a team. The kind of the mindset typically is win the series, right? And I think we're no different than any other team in the league. You're always going out with these 3-game series and trying to win the series. But when you get that second win in game 2, you kind of fight that mindset of saying, hey, we've done what we have to do for the weekend. Anything else is kind of icing on the cake. And it's easy to kind of let up at that point. And I challenged our guys to not let up, to be mature and be a disciplined baseball team and go out and take care of business and finish the deal. And I thought they showed a lot of maturity in the way that they handled Game 3. That was kind of my big takeaway was, truth be told, we're not supposed to win the series against Ottawa. And we had done that, but they didn't rest on it. They came out and they played mature baseball, disciplined baseball in Game 3, and so that was really my big takeaway. The 2 things I took from that weekend were, you can never count us out, even when we're down. We won't always come back and get the W, but we will always make a run and try to come back. And then Game 3, I thought showed a lot of maturity on their part.
That was something that we saw a lot from you guys last year. Kind of were notorious for a handful of half-dozen walk-off wins over the first 2 months of the season a year ago. We've had a couple of those already this year, but that comeback mindset, the mentality that we're never out of it, even if we're down late or down big early, doesn't matter. You guys have carried that into this year. So that is something that I heard from my team, from your team, and from you after that Ottawa series. Just that idea, that ideal that even though we may be down, even though we may be trailing, we've still got time left, and we are capable of making this a game, if not outright winning it. How do you instill a mentality like that? Because I can't imagine it's easy to maintain.
Well, I'd like to sit here and tell you, well, I've instilled this or I've instilled that or whatever. It's a character trait that I try to have in my own life, but I think it's just a natural character trait that a lot of the guys on this team have. I do think, if you talk to the guys on my team, they'll all tell you that I'm a big Rocky Balboa fan. If you've been in my office, you know that I've got the Rocky posters up all over the place, and those movies actually were very influential in my life. And I think kind of the theme of those is, you're not always going to win every time, but the challenge is really pushing yourself to the limit and just giving it your all and being able to, at the end of the day, say, hey, I never got counted out. I gave it everything I had and fought till the very end. And like I said, that's kind of a way that I've tried to live my life and kind of a character trait that I have. And I see that in a lot of the guys. Not to say that I've imparted that to them, but I think that's something that I can bond with this team over. Is there's a common thread between me and some of the leaders on this team that, it's not fun to lose, but there is something special about challenging yourself to go all the way. And you never know what can happen in baseball when you go all the way. You down by 6 or 7, if you commit yourself to fighting and going the whole way through, you cut that to 2 or 3, and when you get into a 2 or 3 run baseball game, one play here, one play there, anything can happen. So I think it's just a mentality that I don't think it's anything that I've instilled in these guys. I think it's just something that a lot of these guys naturally have, and it's just kind of become a theme in our dugout.
The other thing that we saw that you guys have developed this year, and something you hinted at a minute ago, is a question that I asked you to finish off your last appearance here with us. Something we did see last year is that comeback mindset, the walk-off wins, never say die mentality in a lot of games. Something that we didn't see was that completion aspect. You win the series, and then Game 3 gets away one way or another. That was something that we talked about the last time as well. So far here through this year, we've seen a little bit of a different story. You guys have won Game 3 after winning Games 1 and 2 more often now this year than you did last year to this point of the year. We're obviously only a third of the way through conference play, about halfway through the regular season, so there's still time, obviously. But at this point in the year, that was one of the questions I asked you the last time, is how do you make that jump from saying, all right, our goal is to win the series, but we need to do better in Game 3 and win some of those games and pick up some extra slack that way. You've done that more often this year than you did last year to this point of the year. What do you think is a difference there?
I think the two things I would point to is one the simple answer is I think we're just a better baseball team.
Sure, that helps.
And I think it's real helpful. I do think that's a part of it, but I also think that one thing that this team does better than what we've done in the past is we let go of the negative. Throughout the first couple games of a series, there's always going to be something here, something there, whether it's a call you don't like, a reaction you got from the other team that you didn't like, or a mistake that you made, that we made. And I think this team has done a really good job of having a short memory and just saying, hey, that was a bad call, or hey, that was an error that we made that we shouldn't have made, but I can't change that now. So onward and upward, on to the next play. And I do think, aside from the fact that I do think we're just a little bit deeper and have more talent on our team this year, I do think there's a good mentality of not holding on to any of the things that didn't go quite right in Game 1 and Game 2 and moving on and focusing on the things that we can still control. So if I had to pinpoint two things, I think that would be them.
Here's my hardball question for you this time around. How good is Oklahoma Wesleyan? Because that was who you guys faced this past week. They were not ranked in the preseason poll. I think it was pretty clear as we went along at the start of the season. It was clear to me and to a couple people on my team that they would be figureheads, and now they are. They are nationally ranked at this point in the year, despite not being in the preseason, like I said. So are they likely to be number one team in the conference by year's end? Are we still looking at, Kansas Wesleyan, Tabor, a team like that maybe, or is it Oakwood probably number one?
It would be hard for me to say without having seen
Sure.
Tabor or K-Dub, but man, Oakwood is pretty deep, and we have this thought process in our dugout that, man, if you can just get into the bullpen, that's kind of been our MO, right? Is hang tight against the starter and then kind of win it in the bullpen. And boy, the talent kept coming. I'm not. It's like, oh, okay, good. That guy's really good. Let's try to maybe get to the next guy. Oh, good. He's really good too. They hit up and down the lineup defensively. They make good plays. One of the things I'm always struck by with Oakwood is they just do most everything right. So I know that they split with Tabor last week. I think they play again tomorrow. They haven't seen K-Dub yet. If I had to pick, I would pick Oakwood. If somebody was making me make a bet right now or something, I would
try
probably
to not make that happen.
No, right. Just to be clear, Tim is not asking me to.
There's no forcing here.
But I would probably say that they're the best team we've seen so far.
That's fair.
That being said, I was impressed with the way that we were able to hang with them. I thought we hung with them a lot better than we did last year. So
I don't think there's any question about that. And I mean, all three games were close for a time, and two of the three games were single-digit games at the end. One was a late inning win on their part. Like, if that is the number one team in the conference, and very well might be at the end of the year, you guys hung with them consistently, and that's something that not every team is going to be able to say.
Yeah, you know what was weird too in that series, not to get off on a big rabbit trail or anything, but typically when we play some teams like that have a lot of thunder in their lineup, kind of like you're checking the wind, right? And a lot of places in our league the wind blows out. That's not always our favorite thing to see.
No kidding.
But the wind was blowing in Game 1. We played Game 1 at a different location than we played Games 2 and 3 this weekend. The wind was blowing in Game 1, and weirdly, Tim, I actually think that ended up hurting us more than it helped us, which is kind of rare. Looking back just at the game that Cash and Schron's threw against them, I thought it was the best game he's thrown since he came here. I honestly thought, weirdly, when that game was over, I was like, man, I think if the wind was blowing out, we might have fared a little bit better, which is not conventional wisdom when we play them. And then the next day they hit 6 home runs in Game 3 and we only hit 1. I mean, forcing extra innings when you get out homered by 5 is something to see.
No doubt.
But yeah, it was just weird. But it was nice because I really, really felt like Schron's threw. Like I don't think the wind helped him, and that was really encouraging to see. He went out and threw an absolute gem against them, and typically, like I said, they didn't hit balls that I thought that the wind kept in the park. So
my inside baseball question then is that, and some of this is kind of intuitive compared to a true inside baseball question perhaps, but I'll just use the terminology to ask this question. Can you help explain for people that may not understand what the wind blowing in versus out means? Obviously, if it blows out, it's probably the ball's likely to carry a little bit more. We all understand that, but anything past that, what kind of an impact would that have had that you're just outlining? What could that have changed in Game 1 or maybe in some other games that you've played this year?
Well, the wind down there on Game 1 was blowing kind of in from right field and across to left, but not pushing out to left, which, they have some big hitters that if the wind's blowing out, they can get the ball up into that wind and it'll push it, over that right field, over that left field fence or even over the right field fence. But the way that the wind was blowing the other day, it was just anything that got hit hard to right, it was really keeping in. And like I said, there was no out to it was blowing towards left but not out, and so it was just kind of keeping everything in the park. Where typically a lot of the times when we play, not so much them, a little bit them, but a lot of the schools in Kansas, the wind is almost always blowing out, and it's not like a cool breeze or anything. It's definitely a lot of teams that will have that game plan of getting the ball up in the air and letting the wind carry it, which the wind doesn't typically blow that way here, so that's not really the way that we're built to play. We don't really try to elevate the ball and get it up in the air all that much. But it was just interesting. It was just interesting.
Before we move on into this week, let's talk one. You mentioned Cashin Trons. Obviously, he had the complete game shutout against Bethany, and then an excellent start this weekend against Oklahoma Wesleyan. I want to highlight Alex Walton once as well. We talked quite a bit about him, honestly, on the broadcast and afterwards. But KCAC Pitcher of the Week after his complete game shutout against Ottawa a couple of weekends ago. It's the first that we've had for the team this year. Haven't had many. We had a couple last season. Hadn't had many at all since I have been here prior to that. So all of that is to say it's a rare occurrence because of how good the rest of the conference is maybe, but it was cool to see him rewarded for as great of a game as he had. One of the best games that I've seen anybody pitch so far this year.
Oh, absolutely. And Alex is a kid that I could not be more proud of. He's a kid, he's been here 3 years now. He just, he works hard. And he's never been like a guy where, like, when he goes out and throws his bullpen, you're just absolutely wowed with his stuff.
Sure.
He's just a guy that's got really good stuff from the left side, and he knows who he is, and he knows how to use it, and he just executes. We used him for an inning again this past weekend, and he was super pitch efficient, which was just so good to see. And I mean, like I said, he's just a guy that's worked hard. He doesn't not a lot of fanfare to what he does. He doesn't ask for a lot. Never say, "Hey, coach, can I start? Hey, coach, can I do this?" Just a number of different roles for us over the years. He's just continued to get better and better. We saw it this summer in the Van Johnson League too. I believe he was the MVP of the All-Star game. If I know he pitched in it.
You're right.
That's the kind of kid you root for. The kid who just keeps getting better and keeps getting better. And he doesn't go out and win because he's just super dominant. He goes out and wins because he does his job very, very well. So
we talked with Coach Eric Mojica about this after that series because I know obviously how much of an impact he's had on the pitching side over the last couple of years, and this year with his role as player development director, that's kind of his goal. His job is to get players better, help them improve over the course of their lifespan here. But something that is very clear to me, and I think it's because this is how my favorite professional team operates as well. They build these guys up. When Walton came here, he was a 1-inning, 2-inning max guy, and now he's consistently this year throwing 5. Did that multiple times, threw into the 6th once, and then threw that 7-inning complete game shutout against Ottawa, which, again, this is not an insult. That's not something many people are capable of, but it's not something that he would have been capable of 2 years ago. And it's something that you guys have steadily built him into, helped him grow into over the last couple of years, from a 2-inning max guy to a 4-inning max guy, and now somebody that's going to go out there and give you 5, 6, or 7.
Yeah, and he's really proud of that. And he's, it's funny because I forget if it was the 5-inning game. I think he had thrown about 70 pitches, and he did not want to come out. He did not want to come out. And I went and I said, "Hey, I think we're done here. We're pushing." And he's like, "Okay, great kid, always going to do whatever I tell him to do." But then after the next inning was going, he just came up to me and he said, "Hey, I just want to make you aware that at 75 pitches, I felt really, really good." And I said, "Noted, Alex, noted." And I reminded him of that whenever he was pitching that complete game. Again, just a guy that goes out, does his job, doesn't ask for much. But I just thought it was funny that day he just wanted me to know that there was definitely more in the tank. And he proved himself right. So, really happy for him. Just a great kid, and he's been huge for our success so far this year.
We haven't got to see you guys at home for the last couple of weeks. You've been on the road the last 2 weekends. But this week we're going to get all of that back. You got a home game on Tuesday and then a home series this Friday and Saturday. Rather than kind of going into the nuts and bolts of these opponents, I'm curious what you guys, from an operation standpoint, from a staff standpoint, how you approach weeks like this. Because you had a few of them last year, obviously, and you've had weeks already this year in non-con where you have 4 games to cover, but it works a little bit differently now that we're in conference play where you've got these midweek games or maybe 2 going forward on Tuesday and then a 3-game series that weekend. So what is your approach, and what is from the pitching standpoint and everything else, how do you attack a week where you've got 4 conference games?
Well, so going into this week, kind of the thought was, and no disrespect to any teams or anything, but like right now, going into this week, we were behind Oakwoo in the standings and we were ahead of York in the standings. And the thought process was, teams that are behind us, we need to keep them behind us. So we needed to make sure that we had ample pitching left for this game on Tuesday. Now that really wasn't that difficult. We kind of kept Imson, and then we limited Walton. this weekend. We kept Impson back and we limited Walton. So we're going in. I feel like we feel pretty good about the arms that we have available to us tomorrow. And I think that should work out pretty well. The tricky one, Tim, is going to be in a week or so when we have two on Tuesday. And truthfully, maybe ask me next time I'm on because I don't know what we're going to do about that yet. So I think that we used the Oku series to give a couple of guys, a look at in the starting rotation. One, because we did, like I said, we did want to save some resources for this Tuesday. But two, knowing that we have these 5-game series coming up, it was a good opportunity for us to kind of audition some guys and see what they look like, innings 1, 2, and 3. Because we know we're going to have to find that going into next week. I don't know. Don't know that we've settled on anything yet. Well, I mean, actually, I do know that we have not settled on anything yet. But this week, I think it's fairly manageable and fairly cut and dry for us. But it'll be interesting to see. That's something that we're going to have to decide before Friday because how we manage the series this weekend will have some impact on what we do on Tuesday. So I don't know. I think it's easy enough for this week. Like you said, we've had the 4-game series before. But next week's going to be when it gets really tricky, and I'm not quite sure we have the answer for that yet.
I think that's such a good point because now this is something that every team in the conference is going to have to deal with. Just about. Some are able to kind of keep the standards setup that we've had the last few years. But just to drive the point home, the last few years in the conference, the midweeks have all been against local opponents. In other words, teams that you don't have to travel very far to face. So that's why it's easier to make it happen on a Tuesday, perhaps. So you're traveling to Ottawa, it only takes an hour versus traveling to Southwestern, it'll take a few. So I loved that setup for you guys from an operations standpoint. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. And so this year we've already had the weekend series against the local teams, the 3 local-ist teams, most local, Evangel, Ottawa, and St. Mary, which to me I thought would be the candidates for a midweek series. But now they've changed that up, which is cool from a fan standpoint because now we get to see a weekend series against Ottawa, which I've never seen before. So that was neat. But it now complicates things a little bit because you will have 2 games against Southwestern at one point, 2 games against York at some point on a midweek, which is not something that you have had to deal with at any point. And other schools are dealing with the same. It's not just an Avila problem, but it's something new in the KCAC this year because you've had those 4-game weeks before, but never have had a 5-game week before. And I think that's an important distinction to make. It
is, and it'll be interesting to see. I imagine that other teams will be in the same boat as us.
Yeah.
I mean, man, 5 games worth of pitching is not easy. If somebody's got it, they're going to be in pretty good shape. But we'll see. It's going to be hopefully the bats are hot. I mean, I say this right now and watch them end up being 2-1 games or something. But I anticipate, especially when we get into those 5-game weeks, that you might see a healthy amount of runs put up. So, but that's one of the things going back to what we started talking about at the beginning. That's why you can never be counted out. Like, I mean, I'm telling you right now, a 6-run lead in this conference that game is not over. So we'll have to have that mentality, one of coming ready to hit, but also knowing that it's the full 9, man. It's a full 9.
The other thing about this setup, and this is something that I'm used to coming from Division I. I was certainly no player, but I covered our team in college, and we had midweeks consistently on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and then a weekend series, typically Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's normally how it's structured in Division I. But the difference here is that those midweek games, and I know I'm preaching to the choir with you, but the difference is that those midweek games were against quote-unquote lesser teams or, more importantly, non-conference games. So our team got to use those games, whether they were home or away, as auditions, like you said, to give guys a starting experience, get some other guys in the lineup. Maybe people had a class on Tuesday and they couldn't make it anyway. So they had the luxury of attacking those games differently because at Northwestern we would play UIC or Bradley or UW Milwaukee or whoever it was, and those games meant less. Now, we weren't competing for Big Ten championships or anything like that, so the weekend series, we weren't expected to win many of them, but they still attacked those because those weekend series against other Big Ten teams mattered a whole lot more. And this setup is different because these midweek games mean just as much.
Yep, just as much. So it'll be interesting. It's our first time navigating it this way, but it's the first time for everybody else too. Thankfully we have the luxury of we're up a little higher in the standings than we're accustomed to being. Hopefully that isn't always the case. Hopefully we it becomes more of a norm for us to be up there. But you know, I don't know. We'll see. We will see. My promise is if we do it wrong the first time, we'll get it a little more right the second time.
Good thing is there's a couple of opportunities for this with how many midweeks you have.
Sure.
4 total dates, right?
Sure.
Well, we will finally get to see Avila baseball back at home this week. The first of those midweek games this Tuesday against York, and then a weekend series Friday, Saturday, weather permitting, against Friends. As always, you can watch all of that action live and for free right here on the Avila Sports Network, live and for free anywhere. So, again, that's this Tuesday here at the Z against York, and this Friday and Saturday against Friends. Coach Carp, thanks for being here.
Appreciate you, Tim.
That is head baseball coach Matt Carpenter. This is Eye on the Eagles. We'll be right back with head men's wrestling coach Eric Mateo after this break. Welcome back into Eye on the Eagles. I'm Tim Hackett, now joined by head men's wrestling coach Eric Mateo. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Thank you.
That is another great start for me on this show. We are living large here on this March 18th. Happy to have you with us, and very happy to have you with us. Congratulations are in order to you for what you guys have been up to over the last couple of weeks. First of all, if you haven't heard the news by now, congratulations on leading Darius Webb to All-American status for the first time in program history. Congratulations. How are you feeling?
Thank you. Very, very proud. It's been maybe 3 weeks now, so the excitement has kind of mellowed back out. But it's pretty cool to have a first All-American, and it's exciting moving forward. That's big for Darius himself. Super proud of that guy, seeing where he was at personally, just as a person, not necessarily just as a student athlete, but who he was and how much he developed and grew up over the short amount of time I've known him. So I'm super proud of him. He had it within him all along, and this year he finally stepped up in some ways that he hadn't before. So his goal was to get on that podium, and he did. So proud of him, and then proud of, he doesn't get there alone. So super grateful for all my assistant coaches and then all of his training partners. And so, just proud of the program. But, like I said, we're, about 3 weeks removed. So just looking forward already. That's a stepping stone now.
It really takes a village to put together a team like this. An individual success. Ultimately, the sport is so individual. It's mano a mano, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes from the practice standpoint, from the training standpoint, from the coaching standpoint. So many different people that combine for one individual to be finally on that podium.
Yeah, 100%. It's like you said, it takes a village, and he needed someone to train with every day. He going into that national tournament, myself and all my assistants, and we spent probably hours and hours and hours just talking about game planning for specific guys, or specific guys we might wrestle. He doesn't need a game plan because he's better, or guys that on paper might have been better or higher seed and or certain stylistic matchups. So scouring film, watching film, and it's kind of a blessing and a curse because we got one guy at the national tournament. He gets all six coaches' attention.
Sure.
The dream is we have 12 guys there, and, each coach is involved with 2 guys. But it was a good lesson for the coaching staff and myself at the national tournament, how much it takes. Obviously the work is put in throughout the season, and it all culminates at the national tournament. But even at that national tournament, how much detail, how much time, and how much effort it took to get Darius prepared mentally and tactically for those matches. So I was proud of my coaches, really thankful for them. And, it goes, like I said, the work's done throughout the season. That's from training partners, coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, athletic training. So, yeah, just getting him where he needed to be mentally, physically, it took a lot, and it took a lot from him. So, again, I'm super proud of everyone involved, especially Darius.
I used this term a minute ago when we were talking with Coach Karp, so I'll use it here. This is not literally an inside baseball question, but I will ask you an inside wrestling question, because you just said there's a lot of scouting, film prep, things like that, because everybody you could potentially face in a tournament like this. You've got the entire bracket laid out in front of you, and obviously mathematically it's unlikely you'll face certain guys at certain points. But so you may not have to spend as much time against certain people. But is that something that happens over the course of the year in your sport? Because obviously, a sport like football, there's film studying all the time. Do you film study going into a duel, for example, as much as you would, or to the same level, or at all, compared to what you do at the national level?
No, that's a really good question, Tim. There's kind of 2 ways to watch film, at least for me. 3 ways for this program. Early in the season, preseason, and once we start our official season, we start competing, we look at our performances. We're watching our duels, our matches. Here's the things you did really well. Take those away. Here's the things we need to work on. Take those away. So that's one, right? And then as you get later in the season, towards postseason, towards the KCAC tournament, towards the national tournament, we're more looking at, all right, let's develop a game plan for certain guys. Like you said, the brackets are out. Very statistically likely you might wrestle whoever, so you're going to watch, all right, here's how we beat them. So there's the kind of 2 sides of that, and then I'm a fan of the sport, so I'm constantly watching wrestling, and so that's the third one. Just kind of watching as a fan and looking at techniques being used at the highest level, and just seeing, watching the Division I tournament, which is coming up here in Kansas City, which is exciting. Coach Zach and I will be there looking at international wrestlers. So just watching the sport as a fan. That's kind of the third angle.
I love that side of it because now at this point in the year, you've got tape out there on everybody. And everybody's wrestled a large number of matches. Not everybody at this tournament. There were some guys who wrestled single-digit matches all year, which I find is crazy. But most people are 20-plus at this point, right? And so you've got tape out there, whether it's the coach's tape that you're filming on the side on an iPad or the quality that we're putting out on a live stream, whatever it is. You now have data, results, yes, head-to-heads, yes, and also literal tape that you can go in and scout any one of these guys. And also at this point, something that you and we've talked about, Coach, and we've talked about with Coach Zach on the show as well, is that you've now seen a lot of these guys, and Darius, or whoever it is, has now wrestled a number of the guys that he saw in the national tournament, or at least could have seen in the national tournament. And that was, as we talked about before you guys went, is the whole point. You've seen all of these guys before, and in his case, he's beat some of those guys before, and that led him up to success again.
Yeah, as you talk about seeing these guys before, yes, it's to get the tape and to get the technical things down, but more so it's to where do we line up against these opponents? And we can find that, and the beauty is we found that out in November. We found that out, at the Missouri Valley Invite in the second semester. So yes, to get tape, get data, get information, but also where do we measure up and where do we need to adjust? So it's kind of back to the two-tiered thing of watching film, right? Analyzing what we do well, what we don't do well, and then maybe towards postseason, it's all right. Now we're watching the opponents and kind of seeing if they have any tells, any tendencies, any positions that we should go to, or any positions that we should avoid. If you watch tape on Darius, you don't want to go upper body with the guy. He's most guys he wrestles upper body throws, he's gonna beat. So that's kind of looking at our own tape. So for us, it was, hey, you have these weapons, but how can we develop some other things to maybe set up where you're best, which is upper body.
So is that at this point in the year, and this is not meant to be a leading question, this is a sincere question, everybody's got their own strengths, everybody's got their own deficiencies in the sport underneath, the restraints and the constraints that you have. Do you work on reinforcing those strengths or trying to build up whatever the weaknesses might be to try to make a wrestler more well-rounded? So I guess that is now a question for individually with Darius at the national tournament, and then also for your final 12 that went into the KCAC tournament a couple of weeks before. Now that you have a little bit more localized attention, fewer guys to manage, if you will. So do you continue to reinforce where people are best, try to build up where they're weak, or is it across the board?
Today or leading up to the conference?
All right, great. All right, fine. Great question. Let's start with leading up into postseason.
Yeah. So leading up into the postseason, at that point, I don't know if this is a common phrase in other sports, but the hay is in the barn. As in, we've done the work already.
Okay.
So now it's about fine-tuning. It's just about feeling good. How can you mentally feel good? How can you physically feel good? How can you have your heart and emotions in a good place? And remembering what your goals are. So leading up to the conference tournament, it's very routine. The practices are short. They're not going to be the breakneck, high-intensity, beat each other up kind of practices that we might have earlier in the season. Leading up to the postseason, it's about execution, timing, feeling good, ready to fire on all cylinders, and less is more when it comes to wrestling practice.
Okay.
So, like I said, the hay is in the barn. The work is already done. So now it's just time to go execute. So we don't want to wear, the season is long. We want us feeling our best leading up to the conference and the national tournament, not drained and beat down, which I think in prior years, prior decades, the sport may have been a little bit more where the guy, you're just going hard all year long. So you want to peak. You want to be able to peak, and part of lowering that intensity leading up to the postseason is part of that peaking.
And then what about your counter to my initial question is things are different now. So you mentioned what it's like at the start of the season, now at the tail end of the season leading into the postseason, the most important time, and now what is it like in contrast now that the competition is done and you're in the off season, if you will? What's the difference like?
Yeah. So it was cool. Long answer here. Apologize.
No, that's great.
I made it a point to make sure that Darius was our sole national qualifier. We brought our coaches. We brought official parties. His training warm-up partners. But I made it a point. Every guy on the team, get down here. See what this national tournament looks like. See what the guys that you've wrestled, maybe lost to, maybe beat, are in this national tournament. So, like I said, maybe on a previous show that we've had, act like you've been there before. Even if you weren't there as a competitor, you've seen it. So now walking away from that national tournament, I think a lot of guys had a realization like, wow, I have regrets about my season, whether I didn't turn every stone over, because I saw at the national tournament there's guys that I was competing with. Maybe they beat me. Maybe I beat one of them. But these guys are realizing that the national tournament is not some fantasy land way off in the distance. This is something that if they put the work in and they put the dedication in, they can be there. And yeah, it's really and wrestling is falls into this pitfall of work hard, which yes, you absolutely need to work hard. But are you working hard with detail, or do you just come in, warm up, wrestle live, go home? So when we're having these open mats here in the spring and summer, having focused attention on specific things in your game that you need to get better at. So yes, we're getting better, but we are detailed. It's working on an hour for one position, not just blatantly going out and working hard. So yes, you need to work hard, but you need to be intentional with your training and point out specific things in your game that maybe you're looking. We're coming up on our postseason conversations I have with every athlete. What did you learn? What did you do wrong? What did you do well? All those things take away should lead into your. Was I too small? Do I need to really, really recommit myself to the weight room? Was I at the right weight class? Could I not get out? Jacob Ramirez, our 141 pounder, he loses to Hartwell Taylor in the conference semifinals, 4-1, and we're all over the guy's leg. Couldn't finish a single leg. That guy goes on to win a national title. And no one could really finish a single leg on him at the national tournament either, so that makes me feel slightly better. But we have to finish that single leg, and we have to be able to get out on bottom. So, that's one example. Jacob Ramirez, his goal, get better at finishing single legs and get out on bottom, So that's where we're at now, is get better at wrestling with intention.
I love that. And that was you took the word out of my mouth, the intentionality of it, specifics, things that you have identified, whether it's that strength or the weakness or somewhere in the middle, doesn't really matter. You've got an idea now, and not just an idea, but a concrete goal for everybody, and certainly more than one, right? But you've at least now got a game plan that you can build off of that based on things that you have now seen from being able to work with them for the last year or maybe 2 years with some of them. So now you know what to do in this offseason, the postseason after the playoff, if you will, and then going into the preseason for next school year, which, that seems like you've got a game plan to set up for every individual and then for anybody else who comes in as well.
Yep. Well, like I said, those conversations, they're on their spring break. And, wrestling's a hard sport. We like to give them. Enjoy your 2 weeks immediately following the national tournament. Don't think about wrestling. Go be a college kid. And then once we get back in the weight room and once we start hitting our open mats, get better. So we're going to have those postseason conversations with each kid and treat it like an annual review, if you will, if you're in a big boy job. This is where you were not good. This is where you need to improve. This is where you were good, and double down on that. So and each guy, it's going to be a little bit different. But again, it was great. Darius did a huge thing for the program. Obviously, so proud for him alone to get that All-American status, top 8 in the country, 6 in the country. But for the program, that's huge. Okay, it shows the guys that are here, that is achievable here. I've seen Darius train. I've seen him work. I can emulate what he's done, right? And then same for, recruits. Like, hey, they can win there. They can get guys on the podium. So like I said, hopefully that's just one of many. He's the first, which is awesome. But again, it's a stepping stone to where we want to be.
Thank you for saying that, because that is exactly the tee-up that I was looking for this part of the conversation. Something that I've been able to talk with you about and with Zach about and with Graham before you about was the ideals and the vision of the first of this program, because this program was started just a couple of years ago, and just by definition, somebody is going to be the first of anything, first of everything, and that was part of the major pitch for when this program was starting to bring in athletes for the first time, and now for yourself as you continue to grow it now into year 4 coming up this fall. So what does it mean now for you that you have accomplished yet another first? You've checked that box off finally, and I don't even want to say that because it only took 3 years, but that to me is impressive, and to many others it's very impressive, but that was the elusive next first, and I think really there's only one other first that could still be achieved, and that would be a national champion. And in my book at least, you have now checked off one of the last firsts that this program had yet to achieve.
Yeah. It would be a team conference title.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, that's Ottawa, they won it, and St. Mary took second, and actually St. Mary finished ahead of Ottawa at the national tournament. So the KCAC wrestling is getting better. and we need to continue to do our part. But I'd love to win a conference title.
Okay.
But I'm not even thinking about that right now. I'm thinking about how can my guys get better today? How can they get stronger in the weight room today, day by day, week by week? And if we continue to trust in the process, we'll be there. But sorry, to get back to your first question.
It's a fair answer.
You don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the dream. Who's it's just now. Okay, All-American wise, who is next? Who is next? Yeah, and of course we're chasing a national title. That should be the dream and goal for any college wrestler. Everyone wants to do that, and I tell my guys all the time, like, everyone in the country is going to practice lifting weights. What are you doing outside of that to separate yourself? So that's kind of where we're at right now.
I just have loved seeing that trajectory, and it's something that we've tried to catalog, in this platform and other platforms, whatever. But all of those boxes just steadily being checked by your team, by Zach's team, and by the program together. The first participant, the first dual victory, the first team dual victory, the first individual tournament champion, the first conference placer, the first conference champion, and now the first All-American.
Yeah, there are still many firsts to be had. We had a 3.3 team GPA last year, and the goal was 3.5. So we hit a 3.5. That'll be the first time we've done that.
Sure.
Year 2, we had 3 national qualifiers. We need multiple All-Americans now. Who's going to be a part of the first team to have 2 All-Americans, 3 All-Americans? We've had 3. Can we get the first team to have more than 3 All-Americans? So we're as hungry as ever. We had a good, like I said, we're about 3 weeks removed from the national tournament. I am and my staff is super excited to put the work in for 24-25.
What happens now at this part of the year, now that the postseason is officially complete? We've talked nationals. We'll talk KCAC tournament for a minute as well. But now that we are here, a couple of weeks removed from when you were in Wichita for the national championship, what happens now over the next couple of months while this school year is still going on?
Yeah, the guys need to finish academically strong. That's priority number 1. Priority number 2 is getting better at wrestling. Get better at wrestling. And, to each guy that means a little bit something else, something different. Get better at wrestling, and then get as big and as fast and as strong as possible. That's where we're at right now.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's flash back a couple of weeks prior then to the KCAC tournament, because that is the build-up obviously into nationals, and it leads some people in there directly, automatically. We have seen the team do well at that event over the last couple of years now in year 3 in the program. You entered 12 guys into the tournament, 11 competed, and you had a half dozen placers as well, including a couple of guys that placed second. Seems to me like a strong weekend of competition for you guys at the KCAC tournament.
Yeah, that one, it's always a weird feeling with the KCAC tournament, because it's like, yeah, I placed, but did I qualify? And that's the true barometer, right, if you qualified. So, we took 3rd as a team. I'm pleased with that. I don't know that this team could have beat St. Mary or Ottawa at that tournament this year. So I'm pleased with our 3rd. There was a few guys in there that did not perform and are feeling some kind of way about that now. So it's lit a fire, and hopefully that continues to stay lit. But it's unfortunate that sometimes having a poor performance, it takes that to kind of propel you forward, but that's life. So, I was pleased with our performance. Again, like I said, great to have all those conference place winners, but there is the asterisk, like, oh, yeah, I took 2nd, like Tyler. Took 2nd in at 125, but didn't qualify. So, you took 2nd in the conference. That's good, but really we're looking to get qualifiers through. So
now that is a good follow-up question, because this is my hardball question for you: is the fact that you place a conference but don't qualify for nationals, is that now obviously I get that's disappointing, because everybody's got that dream and expectation and desire to be at that other event, but my expectation, my conclusion going in when we were first starting to work with wrestling here, is that placing in conference is an achievement. Now there's obviously higher goal, there's another stage past that we understand, but placing at conference was looked at as an achievement and as an accomplishment. So my hardball question for you is, if you look at this objectively as possible, is placing in the conference tournament, maybe not in our conference, but maybe just in general, is that indeed an achievement, or is that really that far kind of below the qualifying for the nationals part? Is that much more, elites of an accomplishment, I guess, is my question.
Well, yes.
Okay.
It's an achievement. There's levels to achievements, right? How many guys are in your bracket in a bracket? There's 28 guys. 28 guys qualify for the national tournament. How many guys don't?
Yeah, a lot.
So, that even how many guys place in conference don't
qualify. Yep, sure.
So, yeah, it's an achievement, but none of my guys were going, at least I hope, none of my guys were going into that like, hey, I want to place. No, they went into it, understand. And I had these conversations like, this is where you have to be to get to the national tournament, at this tournament. And, we're not big on outcomes and results or effort and process-based, but in the end of the day, the reality is if you place outside of where you need to, you're not a national qualifier. And the goal of the conference tournament is to set your qualifiers,
okay,
right? So the mindset has to go in, obviously one match at a time and all those things, but the reality is you need to place a certain place to get to the national tournament.
And you guys went into that competition with after the conversation that we had when you were on the show last time, fully aware of you need to finish third or higher in this bracket to qualify. You need to win this bracket to qualify, as the case often was. So you guys went through that, went through those parameters and those expectations with all the athletes going in?
Yeah, most of my guys are pretty educated
Sure.
on the process. Some of the younger guys not so much, or some of the guys that were new to the conference team were not. But yeah, those were individual conversations that we had, and we had the seeding meeting the night before the conference tournament, and I was really actually pleased with our seeds. I thought we got the seeds that we deserved, and we just had to go wrestle. Unfortunately, so we fell short, and that's okay. And some seeds we busted, so it goes both ways. The
Sure.
seedings, whatever. But yeah, each guy knew where they had to be to get to the national tournament. Yeah.
So
I would want to know as an athlete.
I think I would as well.
Yeah.
I guess my question then would be, is that I have to do this. I have to do this. If you're continuing just to focus on that, does that then kind of bog down the process, like we said, where you have to go one match at a time because you can't finish first if you don't win your first round match?
Yeah. No, that's the balance. That's the balance, obviously. Yeah, it's a skill to take that because, you're thinking about I got to be whatever second, or win the conference, and you start thinking about that and you get ahead of yourself. So, yeah, and I think that happened to us, a couple times. Even a heavyweight, you had to win that weight, and Gavin made it. Gavin, one of our heavyweights, made it to the finals and didn't have his best performance, and I think it was the all on the line, So we got to get away from. We have to treat every single match like it's the national finals. We have to treat every single match like it's the most important one, and not just like I said, it's some crazy thing that we might never achieve down the line. So again, we're getting better at wrestling, but also we have to get mentally tougher and stronger, and being able to deal with. Yeah, I need to take second, but again, be where my feet are, be present, handle the position, handle the match right in front of me. So it's a balance, and it's not everyone is capable of balancing that.
How do you then balance the idea, the concept that we need to treat every match like it is the most important one that we're going to face, but also not kind of overblowing that, I guess, because as we've already talked about, and this is not a knock on Gavin, but it's just kind of a coincidence, that one duel that we had at the start of this calendar year against Dakota Wesleyan, that was his match at heavyweight was make or break for the duel, so it was the most important match that we had in that duel, right? If he won it, we would have won the duel. If he lost, so they won it. So how do you have that same type of mentality for every match, all 10 bouts in that duel, and then everything else past that, without also, crippling somebody, let's say, because we're so focused on this is the most important match I'm ever going to wrestle. If I lose, that's really bad.
Yeah.
And knowing well that everybody loses at some point.
Right. It just goes back to focusing on your effort, focusing on putting yourself in, do I care if the guys win or lose? Of course I care if the guys win or lose. I want them all to be successful. That's not the reality, though.
Sure.
So you have to put yourself in a position to win. What does that mean? If I'm good in certain positions, I go to those positions. If I'm not good in certain positions, I avoid those positions. I'm stingy. I don't give up easy scores. So if the guy's better than me, I give myself a chance in the last 60, 90 seconds of a match to maybe win one. So just like I said, focusing on effort, focusing on don't worry about winning and losing. You worry about winning and losing. That's when the match closes in and you start to get the tunnel vision. So it's a balance. Just all we can do is go out there, be the best version of yourself. When I talk about every match as the national tournament or as the national finals, that's so when you get to the big match, you're like, you don't treat it any different. I've been here 35 times this year. That's the kind of mindset to it, because the national tournaments, no matter what, or the conference tournament, it's going to be a different feel. It's going to be a different feel than a duel here we have in October. It just is. So if you can try and emulate the feelings you might get at a big match, do that routine. And then instead of I have 2 big matches a year or 3 or 4 big matches, I have 35. And the mental preparation is the same.
I think that what's so cool about this sport is that a lot of times we can see, even when we're not on the mat ourselves, when those matches mean a lot. Now, obviously, at the national tournament, every match is extremely important. That's a given. Like you said, in the conference tournament, every match is important. That's a given. But there are some things over the course of the year, and then especially that are magnified in events like that. You mentioned, the title match that Gavin was in. That was clear because we knew the situation, right? But even I feel, if I could take myself out of it, knowing when I was watching that match, I was like, all right, Gavin needs to win this to go automatically to the national tournament. He knew that, it seems like. You guys obviously knew that. His opponent, I'm sure, knew that. But I feel like, taking myself out of it, that if I was just a neutral party or a York fan or whatever, watching that match just out of nowhere, it would have been evident to me that that match meant a little bit more than, like you said, a duel here in October. And that shone through brightest to me in the clip that I saw once Darius won his match at the national tournament that guaranteed All-American status, even though he still had a couple more matches to actually compete in. After that, him winning that match finally made it clear to him emotionally, and he was exhausted, I'm sure, and that finally made it clear to him that he had achieved that. He had won that most important match to that point, and I can't imagine there's a better feeling than that.
No, I mean, you saw the emotion and the celebration. That's why it's called the blood round. You win, you're an All-American. You lose, you go home. And and the blood round guy. That's what it's called. Oh, he lost in the blood round. He lost in the blood round. That means they would have won, they would have placed. And we talk about blood round guys all the time. And Darius, man, just he wrestled the best tournament he's ever wrestled in his life. If you look at who he wrestled, bye in the first round, which again is not ideal, but for a guy like Darius, I think he's okay. The problem with the bye in the first round, where he was seated,
right,
he rolls right into number 3, to a guy that he has never beaten, Perez, who is, one of the best guys at 184 in the country. Obviously, he placed 3rd, and was an All-American last year. I really respect that guy's game. So he rolls right into him in the round of 16, drops one, and then it's like, okay, here we go, because if he loses at any point in time, he's done. All right, and then he rolls through, has that overtime match with Brett Bober, who we split with throughout the year. We tech him at the Eagle duels, and then he beats us maybe, I think it was like 21-15 or 21-14 at the Missouri Valley Invite. And honestly, the match, that first round wrestle back, it was nerve-wracking.
Sure.
I didn't know the direction it was going to go. And then we get to overtime and go upper body, and Darius does what he does and gets the fall, and not only does he win, he gets the fall. The bonus points is what propelled us into top 30. We took 44th as a country last year. We're top 30 in the country off of Darius, not just his All-American status, but he pinned guys. So he pinned 2 guys. And then he just goes on a run. He beats the kid from Providence and completely handles him, finds himself in that blood round match, and I talk about game planning, and Darius kind of had 2 game plans for that whole weekend.
Okay.
One game plan was like against Perez. Hey, you need to go out there and let it fly. Give him everything you've got. Attack for 7 minutes, and we'll see where we end up. Now, there's some other game plans where, for instance, in our it would have been whatever match put us into 5th or 6th, which we won, or if we would have lost, we went to 7th and 8th. Okay. So we had the Coles kid from Grandview.
Yeah.
And, that match, again, was just like, hey, let it go fly. But there are other guys in the tournament, for instance, Jackson King from Dickinson State, who we had wrestled twice at the Missouri Valley Invite. It was going to be hey, let's slow it down a little bit, have head position, get go behinds, good down blocks. So we had 2 game plans. And Darius, to his credit, that was the best I've seen him implement game plans since I've been coaching him for just the short 2 years. So, yeah, proud of that effort. And then, okay, you're an All-American, and you got to wrestle Perez again.
No kidding.
So, but that's
congratulations.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the national tournament. That's what we wanted, and he earned it. He 100% earned it, and like I said, couldn't be more proud of him and happy for him. Yeah. Happy for him.
I love that this tournament, and this is not the conversation we'll have with Zach Revere next week on the women's side because that tournament was so chalky, but there were so many runs. You mentioned Hartwell Taylor from St. Mary. I mean, we know that he's a good wrestler, one of the best in the KCAC, but I wouldn't have tabbed him to be a favorite for a national title. Full marks to him for doing that. That's awesome for the conference. Yep. But there were so many other random. Random is being disrespectful, but you expect a number 1 or 2 seed or maybe a number 3 to finally be your winner. And yeah, there were a lot of those in the tournament, as you would expect. But there were a number of guys who made good runs, and one of those guys that Darius had to face was a guy that knocked off 2 top 10 seeds on the first day. And now you look into that, a step further, and it's not like he's a no-name because he was ranked number 20 in the country.
Thomas Ketchum Carter.
Yeah, Ketchum Carter. It's not like he was a nobody, right? So saying that he came out of nowhere to win those matches is doing him a disservice. But still, unseeded guy. Knocked off 2 top 10 seeds, and then Darius had to wrestle hard just to beat him because he was on a hot streak. So I think that is a fun part of this sport that you don't always get to see in a lot of other things.
Yeah, that's why if you get to the national tournament, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. You can go in and like that guy was a match away,
right? And
Darius put him out. If he wins, he's beat 3 unseeded. 3 unseeded goes in and beats 3 unseeded guys. So. Any guy that got on that podium at that national tournament earned it. They earned it. And that's the beautiful thing about like you said, this tournament and this sport, the way it is, it's surprising when you see those top seeds get upset, but if you know wrestling, it's less surprising.
Sure.
Less surprising because it's just any given Sunday, who can turn up, who feels good. Everyone's banged up. Everyone is banged up. Who can turn it on? There's a guy that took 8th, Eric Williams from Dakota Wesleyan, we wrestled a kid, and to be frank, I'd be like, okay. I mean, he beat our guy. He beat Rel. But did I think he was All-American contender? Not necessarily.
Yeah, I don't mind saying it. That's how I felt, too.
Yeah, and then, he goes out and gets on the podium. So, fair play to him. That's the awesome thing to see.
Yeah, no doubt.
At the national tournament, anyone's game. So.
And that's so cool. That is now what is – driving that point that we were making earlier about how important everything is leading up to it. Because, he won that match that we saw, him competing in our gym, all right. But then, you've got to start stringing those matches together. And then most importantly, win the matches that count the most. And that's what he and a lot of other guys did. And that's something that is, you got to get hot at the right time, right?
100%. That's you said it right there. If you can get hot, and that's part of the peaking, is like, am I training? Can I feel good mentally, emotionally, physically? Can you trick yourself into feeling good? Because you can talk to Darius about his run, but those last 2 matches against so the thing is, he gave Perez everything he had in that second match, and from a coach's perspective, I knew how much Darius had given up to that point, and the tank was empty emotionally, physically, and you're on the podium, so you kind of I don't want to say slide to 6th place, but he earned 6th place, and at that point. So props to the guy from Montana State Northern that beat him, because he was a little bit more emotionally and mentally, or he was less drained than perhaps Darius.
Sure.
I think maybe we see that guy earlier in the tournament. Who knows? I don't want to say we beat him. He beat us fair and square, but at that point in the tournament, everyone's tired. Everyone's exhausted, and it takes another gear inside to earn those places on the podium,
and that,
for sure.
Yeah, such a good point, because we've talked over the course of the year that, I'm thinking off the top of my head, there was one of the weekend tournaments where Gavin wrestled 6 matches, and Darius had to do that once as well.
Yeah.
That is uncommon. And so if you win.
Well, it's uncommon for teams like us because we were not very good yet. If you're winning and you're placing at the Grandview Open and you're placing at the Missouri Valley Invite, you should be wrestling 6 matches.
Okay. Yeah. But that feels like a large number when you might be used to wrestling 3 or 4 maybe.
Yeah, I mean 6 matches in a 2-day tournament, that means you're placing.
Okay.
Right.
Right. So that should be what you're shooting for, yes, but that's still like physically from a taxing standpoint, like you said, it's a lot. So if you win at the national tournament, you're probably only wrestling 4, and you're also winning 4, so that helps. But
5 potentially,
right?
5.
Potentially up to 5 based on the based on
Unless
the bracket.
You got a first round bye.
Right. So,
Yeah.
but at that point, if you're in the 5th place or the 7th place match, that's 7th or 8th match potentially based on buys and other things you might have to go through. So my point of all that is that's a lot. And if you are, I think the way that you framed it was right, if you are less drained, because surely those other guys that he faced in his final 2 matches were also tired, beat up, hurt, whatever the case might be, they were less drained, and that means that they have just that little bit of a step up at that point, which is never easy.
No, and, the mental part of it is you can feel it. You're wrestling a guy, and he's, like, not there, and maybe it's for 7th, and you have a little bit more juice. You can feel it when you're wrestling the guy. So, and we train that. It's like if you smell the blood in the water, then you need to attack aggressively, So it's exciting. That's why the national tournament is so exciting because, like you said, who can feel good on those days, Yeah.
Well, never know necessarily.
Right. Yeah, but that's what it's about, right? Obviously, there's wrestling ability, and some guys will never beat some guys.
No doubt.
But in the middle there, in the rub, there's something where it's everyone's pretty good, but then it's, okay, who wants it a little bit more? And just the margins are so small. So
I feel like the narrative now for us as a program and for your team will shift, not exclusively as you've already outlined, but partially from being the first to now being the next. What are you looking forward to going into year 2 for you, year 4 for the program as you look to find some of those next guys?
Yeah, so to kind of cut back even more, I came on July 1, so I didn't exactly have a full recruiting cycle. So I'm excited for my first full recruiting cycle to see who we can bring on here. So that first, and then it's going to be, who's going to be the next 12? Who's going to be the next in the lineup? Hopefully I'm bringing in guys that can beat or compete with guys on the team right now, and it's iron sharpens iron kind of deal. So who's going to be the next guy to get a 4.0 just this semester? Who's going to be the next guy to be a U20 or U23 UWW All-American, because we got freestyle and Greco, so these guys going to get a training cycle together and go out and compete to be on a world team, freestyle and Greco in their respective age groups, U20 and U23. So who's next? And Darius is probably going to do that as well. He's got another year in U23.
Okay.
So, yeah, he'll be competing freestyle and Greco.
Had some success with that this past summer as well.
Yep. So, he was the first. So, yeah, who's going to be the next freestyle and Greco All-American? Who's going to be the next, it's exciting. Who's going to be in the lineup? Who's going to be on the team? I don't want to look too far ahead into next year's results and postseasons, and right now it's just let's get better at wrestling.
Sure.
Let's get better at wrestling.
Now that you're almost completely to the end of this season, what are you personally looking forward to going forward now that you've completed your first year as our head coach?
Open mats today at 4.
Nice.
That's what I'm looking forward to. One day at a time, and hopefully kind of how I treat the sport trickles down to my athletes, but it's just one day at a time. And if you can find the love in this sport of wrestling, it's a lot easier. And some guys don't have it, and it's evident. So once you love the sport, we'll get you where you need to be,
We've certainly grown to love it over the last couple of years as well. It's something that I've talked with you about. I had a little bit of a background, obviously not a wrestler myself, but covered it a little bit when I was in college. Had no exposure to it prior to that, really, besides seeing 1 or 2 matches in high school, just kind of offhand. But I did cover it for a couple of years in college in various roles, and we only had men's at my university, but it's so entertaining. The sport is fun. I can only imagine how physically and mentally grueling it is. I can only imagine that, but it has been really, really cool to have this now as part of our complement here at Avila University. Again, it's not something that every school has, and it's something that we are really, really excited to have, and we're proud of you guys with the success that you guys had this year. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that, and appreciate all the support and you and your team have given us. So, got our first All-American, top 30 in the country. So, yeah, those are that's the bar, and we're looking to be above the bar next year and progressively build on that every single year. So, yes, I'm happy. Yes, I'm pleased, and I took 3 weeks to celebrate that, and it's already, hey, we're what's next?
We're excited to see what's next for Avila Men's Wrestling. That is head men's wrestling coach Eric Mateo as he wraps up his first season as our head coach. Thanks for being here, sir.
Yep. Thank you, Tim.
And thank you for watching this episode of Eye on the Eagles. We'll be right back next week, same time, same channel, live here from Tanner's at Redbridge. on the Avila Sports Network and live later on YouTube. Thank you, as always, to my team for putting this together, Keaton Ashby and Darian Miner for all the work that they do for me and for us. Thank you to you for watching, and thank you, as always, to Tanners for hosting us. For all of them and for all of us, I've been Tim Hackett. Thanks for watching Eye on the Eagles. We'll see you next time. So long.